Director of The Queen, Stephen Frears, so possibly an awards beta there and based on a true story. Then we've got a film called Drinking Buddies. This is an American indie comedy, what they call the mumblecore movement, about people who maybe drink a little bit more than they should, so something for the weekend there. And Thor: The Dark World, a big budget action film. This time Thor brings his big hammer to London, so we got some familiar landmarks there.
Right, well, Philomena's had a lot of pre-publicity, hasn't it? Because it's a great story.
Yeah, it's won awards, and rightly so. I think it's a really tight script, and it's an amazing true story, as you say. It's about Martin Sixsmith, played by Steve Coogan, a journalist who comes across an incredible true story about a woman who gave her child up for adoption, or rather he was taken away from her when she was a teenager, and she's kept this story a secret for 50 years, and then goes looking for him. And between them, the two of them, with this odd couple friendship they develop, really discover an incredible story. Let's have a look at a clip.
I know this woman. She had a baby when she was a teenager, and she's kept it secret for 50 years.
And what you're talking about would be what they call a human interest story, and I don't do those.
Why not?
You think I should do a human interest story? Hello, you must be Philomena.
I think what they did to you was evil.
I don't like that word.
No, evil's good. Story-wise, I mean.
I was going to ask you if it'd be possible not to use my real name when you write the story. What about Anne? Anne Boleyn. It's a lovely name. Well, somebody had that.
We're going to have to use your real name, Philomena.
I'd feel more comfortable if I could speak to Philomena in private. You're a journalist.
Well, I used to be.
Martin's a Roman Catholic.
Well, no, I used to be. There are avenues we can pursue in America.
I'm getting the royal treatment, Martin. I feel like the Pope.
Champagne or Bucks Fizz?
Oh, no, thank you.
It's free.
Oh, I see. You have to pay for everything on Ryanair.
Well, I'm surprised at how many laughs there were in that little bit, but
Exactly.
the story itself is not a lot of laughs.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is a really tragic story, and what the film does, which is very clever, which gets a really unique balance between comedy and drama. You have the flashbacks to her childhood in a nunnery when things were not pleasant, and these girls were basically taken there to give birth, and their babies were taken away from them. But then in the present, you have these investigations where the two of them rub along just beautifully. And Steve Coogan on co-scripting duty here, you can almost see a little bit of Alan Partridge and Lynn, his assistant, and that kind of sweetness offset with his cynicism. He's the world-really journalist, and she's, excitable. Every fresh breakfast buffet is a new marvel to her. So it is actually funny as well as deeply moving.
And, it's already, as we said, been tipped for all kinds of awards. And both those performances, Dame Judy is very difficult to criticise for anything, frankly,
Absolutely.
usually flawless.
I mean, what I would say is perhaps it would have been more authentic to have an Irish actress in the role, but her accent is pretty good to my ears, and her comic abilities just make up for everything. So, I think she could well be up for an Oscar. Yeah.
And Steve Coogan's not to everybody's taste, but clearly in this, he fits like a glove, doesn't he?
Fits like a glove. He's perfectly cast, and he writes very well for himself, and he's done that really well, and the timing's just spot on.
Well, let's go on to Drinking Buddies, which is a kind of boy-girl buddy movie in a way, but alcohol is involved endlessly.
It is, endlessly. The two work in a brewery. It's Olivia Wilde and Jake Johnson, two names that might be familiar to people who watch a lot of TV, for example, and they play buddies at work and play and basically have beer for breakfast. The snag being they both have other partners, and they go away for a weekend with said partners, and tensions come to the fore. Sounds like a traditional romantic comedy setup, but what I liked about this is it was a bit more authentic and believable than that. It points you in one direction and then it swerves another way. You don't really know who's meant to be with who. It doesn't set up and say, right, well, these two are clearly destined for each other. So it's quite authentic in that way, and quite a nice, largely improvised indie, and the cast do a really good job.
Well, that's interesting, because one of my rather blokish view of some rom-coms is that the rom doesn't work and the com isn't quite funny enough. Very often. Yeah.
This is funny. It's not hilarious, but I think it's also got a dramatic element as well, because it's about observing relationships and observing people, and it's quite thought-provoking about, are people really meant to be each other, or does circumstance play a large part in that?
Well, I know people in Britain think we have got a interesting attitude, shall we put it this way, to alcohol, but it's certainly true in the United States as well. I mean, is this a kind of hangover type?
I think it's more a film that British people would get on with better than Americans, because, I mean, they drink probably at a level a lot of British people do drink,
I'm not sure that's a selling point on the poster. You'll like this because you drink as much. It's probably not the way to go, but it might...
No, it certainly looks into the downsides of alcohol, of course it does. But yeah, no, I think it's appealing for people who like an indie comedy. It's not a traditional rom-com.
Now, Thor 2.
Thor 2.
There's a slightly longer title.
The Dark
Thor
World.
2, The Dark World.
It's not actually that dark a world. Malekith, the new villain, has come in to threaten Thor and the entire universe, in fact, plunge them into darkness. This gives Thor the excuse to plunge back to Earth through a porthole into London, in fact, where he has a chance to hook up with his on-off girlfriend, played by Natalie Portman. Let's have a look.
Jane.
Sorry, I just needed to make sure you were real. It's been a very strange day.
I am. Jane, what?
Where were you?
Where were you? Heimdall could not see you.
I was right here where you left me. I was waiting, and then I was crying, and then I went out looking for you. You said you were coming back.
I know, but the Bifrost was destroyed. The Nine Realms erupted into chaos. Wars were raging, marauders were pillaging. I had to put an end to the slaughter.
As excuses go, it's not terrible. But I saw you on TV. You were in New York.
Jane, I fought to protect you from the dangers of my world, but I was wrong. I was a fool. I believe that fate brought us together.
Well, as really rubbish lines go, I suppose that's better. I believe that fate. Anyway, does he look like a roadie from Status Quo throughout the entire movie?
Yes, pretty much. Yes. Okay. And the good thing, as you see from that, this film has a sense of its own ridiculousness. There's a lot of mythical mumbo-jumbo. It's absolutely absurd, but it regularly stops to have a laugh at itself. You know, as the first one did, and this one does a little bit more. They even have a running joke about someone running naked around Stonehenge, which is basic but works. And as you can see, they also have a lot of battles. The formula goes a little bit like battle sequence, comedy interlude, spot of romance, back to the action. And, you know, it's fairly mechanical, but it kind of works.
It kind of works. I mean, the audiences for this tend to be what? Teenage boys?
Teenage boys and maybe 20-somethings as well. You know, people who are really invested in the comic books and the blockbuster, and a bit of popcorn fun, you know, nothing too challenging.
But not taking yourself too seriously, well, that sometimes works for certain audiences, but sometimes, you know, the teenage boys sometimes actually want something slightly different. Yeah,
I know what you mean. They do have enough of that. Anthony Hopkins is on hand as Odin to sort of deliver the mythical codswallop sufficiently to hopefully, you know, sate that. But, yeah, I mean, I prefer it personally to the likes of Man of Steel in a way, because those are so po-faced and they never admit how absurd they are.
Well, that's jolly good. Anyway, The Selfish Giant is your best of the week.
Yes.
Everybody says such great things about
Possibly even best of the year. It's absolutely phenomenal film. Amazing British filmmaker Claire Barnard, and this is a story of two boys who are sort of searching for scrap metal. They've been excluded from school. It's about their relationship, and it's about a lot more than that. But the two boys are absolutely fantastic, and it's one of those films that I felt is like a future classic, and you really should see it in the cinema now to say I was there and I saw it.
And it's based on a past classic. I mean, for people, it's the Oscar Wilde story about the selfish giant who has a garden, but because he won't let the kids in, won't let children in, the garden cannot thrive. So that you can read that as all kinds of metaphorical ways.
It's very loosely based on that, and there are various elements you could interpret it being linked to that, but I think she's run quite fast and loose with the story. But I mean, in many ways it's a portrait of just two characters who could be any age. It would almost be straight out of a kind of mafia crime thriller, the kind of the relationship of this Machiavellian boy and his kind of more soft-hearted sidekick. It's fascinating.
But it's also been compared to Kes and Ken Loach.
Yes, Ken Loach, Mike Leigh, both directors I would compare her to, which is high praise.
Very, very high praise. Now, your DVD, I've never heard of actually, Mademoiselle
C, yes. It's about Karine Rothfeld, who was the fashion editor, or rather the editor of Vogue in Paris. And she strikes out on her own. It's a documentary about her trying to do a new magazine. So it's really one for fashion fans, but it's got loads of behind-the-scenes access of fashion shows. And you've got Tom Ford and Karl Lagerfeld. And even if you're not into designers, it's actually quite funny, because you know how absurd the fashion world can be.
I thought the September issue was a great film, and I have no interest in the fashion world.
Exactly. It works on a similar level. It's not as good as that, because you know, it's a little bit more sycophantic about its subject, I think. But at the same time, you just watch these fashion shoots and you think, really? You know, they're just pushing it harder and harder to just try and, you know, push the envelope. And she's obsessed with babies, because her daughter's had a baby, so there has to be a baby in every fashion shoot. So it's quite funny.
Are they at all self-aware? Because I mean, the interesting thing about the September issue was you had two very strong characters who bounced off each other in different ways. But self-awareness wasn't one of the strong suits of many of the people in it.
I think that's true. You're watching people in a complete bubble, and you know, you couldn't be more different to the selfish giant. I mean, the limos, the champagne, you know, the first class. It's another world. Yeah.
But not bad for a wet November weekend.
Yeah, interesting viewing.
Okay, Anna, thanks very much. And Mark Kermode will be back with us for the film review next week. A reminder that BBC Radio 5 Live's Well Done You competition closes next Friday. If you're an amateur filmmaker, you can enter the competition by creating a short original film, no more than 2 minutes in duration, which meets the British Board of Film Classification's U classification. The winner will be judged by Simon Mayo and Mark Kermode, and this programme will feature the final 3 films. All details can be found at bbc.co.uk/5live. A quick reminder before we go that you'll find more film news and reviews from across the BBC online, including all our previous shows. That's at bbc.co.uk/film. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching and goodbye.
Hello there. There'll be plenty of those wet November nights that Gavin made reference to over the coming week. Further spells of rain and strong winds. Tonight, the rain, as you can see on the radar, is mostly focused across Lincolnshire, North Midlands, Wales, with some rain just grazing the south coast. Gusty winds in northern Scotland, but they're dying down and the showers are clearing away. With all the cloud and the outbreaks of rain across the southern half of the UK, it will be a relatively mild night with temperatures in towns and cities staying in double digits. Further north, though, a cold one. Temperatures widely getting down to just 3 or 4 Celsius, and there'll be a touch of frost across parts of northern England and eastern Scotland. So, into tomorrow, another batch of wet weather arriving. It's going to be a soggy day across Northern Ireland. This arm of rain will pivot across Scotland, but actually most of Scotland starts cold but dry. There'll still be some patchy rain across parts of Lincolnshire, down across the East Midlands, and the next batch of heavy showers will be working their way into Wales and southwest England. Something a bit dry, perhaps to start the day along the south coast. The winds will steadily pick up as we go through Saturday. That's because this next area of low pressure is arriving. We say goodbye to one, another one arriving hot on the heels. And it's this weather front which will act as a band of showers which will zip across England and Wales, lingering across northern England perhaps and Scotland. Northern Scotland may not see too much of that rain till quite late in the day. Blustery showers will follow on for Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. Some sunny spells in between. As the wet weather arrives across the Grampians, quite a bit of snow here over the hills, say above about 500 metres, and there'll be strong winds as well. So bear that in mind if you're heading out hill walking tomorrow. It'll be blustery. Temperatures may reach the teens in the sunny spells in the south, but it'll feel cooler than that. And the winds continue to strengthen tomorrow afternoon and evening, particularly gusty for Wales and southwest England. It is going to be a blusterous evening on Saturday, and there's quite a bit going on, of course. So if you're planning a bonfire firework display, bear that in mind, please. It will be very gusty, 40 or 50 mile an hour gusts, stronger winds than that around coast. Heavy showers around as well. And if you're heading out on Saturday night, it'll be feeling cool, and it's not going to feel too much warmer on Sunday. It stays blustery, gusty winds, sunny spells in most places, rain taking a while to clear the northeast, and showers. And then more persistent rain arrives across southern areas on Sunday night into the early hours of Monday morning. And with the ground saturated, that's not good news. That's one to watch, and we will, of course, keep you updated.
Look at Jodie out of breath. She's barely left her street. Look at Dan, been stuck like this for well over a week. Stuart's got a blister from climbing every peak. David's fancy dress is high-tech, 'cause he's such a sci-fi geek. Molly's a hero. She's making mountains of cupcakes for the whole of her fleet. They're gonna be sweet and they're gonna be hard, and they're gonna break quite a few teeth. Quite a beauty. Oh, yeah.
With the vast changes in the global economy, understanding what lies behind the headlines matters more than ever. Talking Business with me, Linda Yu, will examine the trends that are reshaping our world. We will focus on what those changes mean for our everyday lives through insightful discussions, distinctive films, and interviews with key personalities at work and at play.
Talking Business, tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. on BBC News.